Hey guys, how you doing? It's iSynthesise here, and today I'm bringing you guys a video that's actually quite different. It's actually a Hearthstone video, and I'm going to be talking about the new nerfs that they've added for when the Whispers of the Old Gods expansion releases next week. Alright, now for those of you who aren't Hearthstone people and you're here for Call of Duty, then sorry, but this video is Hearthstone, but I do encourage you guys to check out the game and actually stick around as well if you guys want to have a little bit of insight into what the game's actually about. You guys can watch this video, and if you think, oh, this actually sounds pretty interesting, then you can try out the game. It's actually really fun, and I encourage you guys to try it out. But for those of you who are here because you do play Hearthstone, I'm not going to talk much more about it. I'm just going to get straight into this. But quickly, something I need to talk to you guys about when nerfs happen is that when these nerfs happen, you'll be able to disenchant all the cards that have been nerfed for their full crafting price. So, for example, an epic card normally gets crafted for 400 dust and disenchanted for 100 dust. But for a short period after these cards get nerfed, an epic card that gets nerfed will be able to be disenchanted for 400 dust. So what I actually encourage you guys to do is when these nerfs go live, which will be next week when the expansion is launched, you guys should just disenchant all the cards that have been nerfed, because you'll get all the dust back from them, and then any cards that are still used, you can craft them again for the same amount of dust, so you won't lose any. But at the same time, if some cards are really bad and they never get used again, you won't have to worry about it because you will have gotten all your dust back and you'll actually have made a little bit of dust as well. What you can also do is go ahead and craft a bunch of cards right now that are going to be nerfed. For example, if you've never played Druid and you want to play Druid, but you've just never had access to the cards, you can go ahead and craft a bunch of the cards for Druid that make Druid really good. And then when the expansion comes out and these cards get nerfed, you can just disenchant them and you will have not wasted any dust, and you'll have been able to play the Druid deck that you wanted to play for a while. So let's get straight into it. Like I said, Druid has been hit by a lot of nerfs. So let's get straight into them, and we'll actually do all the class cards first. Alright, so the first card I'm going to talk about is Force of Nature. So as you can see here, the cost has been reduced to 5 mana, but the Treants do not have charge and they don't die at the end of the turn. So obviously we saw this coming. The Druid combo has been a big part of Hearthstone since the beginning, and it could make pretty stale games, because as soon as you got to 14 health and your opponent had each of these cards, you would just automatically lose the game and there was nothing you could do about it. I think this is a really good change for the card. It's going to remove the combo, but it hasn't made the card terribly bad as well. I think 5 mana for 3 2/2s is actually pretty decent, especially because it'll still interact with Savage Roar. This makes it so that they encourage you to build up a bigger board, which they have been doing lately with some of the Druid cards, and also some of the cards we've seen being revealed. Cards like Wisps of the Old Gods, even cards that they currently are right now, like Power of the Wild, and cards like that, Savage Roar as well, will just make it so that Blizzard is encouraging you to make Druid decks which are not just one type of Druid deck. They're also encouraging you to make Druid decks like a token Druid deck where you have lots of creatures and you buff them up and stuff like that, which is similar to the combo deck, but it's a lot harder to pull off and it's a lot easier to counter, which means it's not just something that can be done without really thinking about it. The next card is Keeper of the Grove. Now, this card has been an auto-include into a lot of Druid decks because it is a 4-mana 2/4 with either Silence or deal 2 damage to a minion. Now, at the time of making this, I have just watched the live stream where they've revealed all the new cards, and the new Druid Legendary actually allows you to choose both sides of a choose one card. So playing this with the new Druid Legendary is actually going to allow you to silence a minion and deal 2 damage. So I think that they really realized that, we need to nerf this card now. So what do I think about this card now? This card is, I don't think, very good. The main reason you would run this card is for silence. There were times where you would use the flexibility for 2 damage, but the main reason was silence. And there's actually a card called Spellbreaker, which is also a 4-mana silence, which has kind of flown under the radar over the past few years. But I think since this card is being nerfed to a 4-mana 2/2, Spellbreaker is actually going to be seeing quite a bit more play, because that's a 4-mana 4/3, which is strictly better than Keeper of the Grove if you ignore the 2 damage part. The 2 damage part is relevant against aggro, but because there are going to be, I don't think there's going to be many aggro decks at all once the new expansion comes. The main reason you'll be using Keeper of the Grove is for the silence, and after this nerf, I think that Spellbreaker will take over the position of this card, and therefore I reckon you guys just disenchant this and you probably won't craft it again. The third Druid card that they are nerfing is Ancient of Lore. Now, Ancient of Lore used to be a 7-mana 5/5 where you either draw 2 cards or restore 5 health, but it was pretty much always a 7-mana 5/5 draw 2 cards. The 5 health really wasn't very relevant most of the time. You'd usually do this to draw the cards, and this is the part that they've nerfed. Now you're only drawing 1 card, and it's not really that good anymore. 7 mana for a 5/5 draw 1 card isn't exceptionally well. You have Azure Drake, which is a 5 mana 4/4 draw a card, which is 2 mana less for 2 stats less, and you get the spell damage as well. So Ancient of Law really is a tough card because drawing 2 cards is very strong for 7 mana and a 5/5, but drawing 1 card for 7 mana and a 5/5 is actually very weak. So I don't think this card will be played much after the expansion comes out. So now onto the other few class cards that were nerfed. Next up is Hunter's Mark, and I really didn't see this being nerfed at all. It wasn't on anyone's radar. Hunter's Mark was a 0 mana spell with change a minion's health to 1, and now it's going to be a 1 mana spell. I really don't see this making a big impact just because it is 1 mana. It's still very cheap, and I think the reason they did this is because of control hunter decks that will, I think, start to see an insurgence in the meta. Right now, the only hunter decks are really aggro and sometimes mid-range hunter, and the card really doesn't fit in with any of those decks. Sometimes it can be used with Unleash the Hounds, but I think this fits a lot better in a control-style hunter, and because there'll be more control-style hunters in the game, they needed to bump this up to 1 mana instead of 0, because 0 is really, really unfair in terms of mana cost. But then again, 1 mana I don't see making that much of an impact either, and you'll be able to slip this in on a turn very easily as well. Alright, and the next 2 class cards are actually rogue class cards, which were kind of slipped under the radar as well. Now, Blade Flurry has been absolutely destroyed. What used to be a 2 mana card that destroys your weapon and deals its damage to all enemies, which now becomes a 4 mana card which destroys your weapon and deals its damage to all minions. They kind of double nerfed this one. I feel like if they had just single nerfed it either way, like made it a 4 mana, destroy your weapon and deal its damage to all enemies, or a 2 mana, destroy your weapon and deal its damage to all minions, it would still be decent, but the fact that they've had to double up on this makes it very hard to find a spot for this in your deck, especially with the higher mana cost. It'll be very hard to play your weapon, buff it up, do an attack, and then destroy it just because you're going to have to pay 2 extra mana to do that combo, and it's going to be pretty hard to do. So I don't really see this card being used that often, so I think you guys can safely disenchant this and not really have to worry about it again. The next card is Master of Disguise, which is actually a card which is being nerfed not because it's overpowered, it's actually not played very much at all, but just because it limits what cards can be made in the future. So for example, if you look at cards like Lord Jaraxxus or Animated Armor, there's a reason that they're not neutral cards, and there's definitely a reason why they're not rogue cards, because if you were to have Animated Armor as a rogue card or a neutral card, you could play that and then Master of Disguise. Because it gives stealth forever, it would just mean that for the rest of the game, unless your opponent had like a Flame Strike or something, for the rest of the game, you can only take 1 damage at a time, which makes it very annoying to play against, and it just limits the design space. So I think that although this is making the card a bit worse, it's not really seen right now at all, so this nerf isn't really going to affect the meta at all, but it just allows for cooler cards to come into the future. Alright, and now onto the neutral cards, and we're definitely starting off with Big Game Hunter. This card has been called for a nerf so much over the past year or so, and ever since they said that they're going to be tweaking some of the cards for standard going into the new expansion, this card was at the top of the list for what will be changed. So as you can see, they've changed it to 5 mana instead of 3 mana. I think this is pretty good. I'm not sure if this completely fixes the problem because it's just the same effect for 5 mana. I would have liked to see just a different effect on it, like perhaps deal 7 damage to a creature with 7 or more attack. Increasing the mana cost does make it less flexible to use, because before, if someone played like, for example, Deathwing, a 10 mana 12/12 which destroys all the minions on the board and discards your hand, if someone plays that and then you next turn play a Big Game Hunter for 3 mana, then you still have 7 mana to play on something else, and that was a huge tempo swing, which really wasn't fair. Making it 5 mana is going to reduce this tempo swing quite a bit, because first of all, you're playing a 5 mana 4/2, which isn't very good, and second of all, you're only going to have 5 mana to play another creature with or another spell with that turn. That being said though, by late game, when these 7+ attack minions are being played, 5 mana is really not going to be that hard to find, especially to kill something that big on the board. So I think this card is definitely still going to see play. This is one card that I probably wouldn't disenchant straight away, especially on the launch day when people are going to be playing so many control decks, so many big minion decks. You're still going to want this card and you're still going to use it. So I don't see any point really in disenchanting it when you're just going to craft it again later. Now, along the same line of thought as nerfing Big Game Hunter, they also nerfed Ironbeak Owl. For the same reason, really. Ironbeak Owl just stops a lot of really cool cards being played. 2 mana to silence a minion is actually pretty good, and then you get a 2/1 body after that, which is pretty decent as well. They've now nerfed it so it's a 3 mana 2/1, which I think is pretty good because a lot of the time you would use Ironbeak Owl would be like in a Face Hunter deck where you were a little bit off lethal, they play a Sludge Belcher, you drop down Ironbeak Owl to silence the Sludge Belcher, and then you also activate your kill command to do the extra damage. So I feel like this is actually a very good change. It has made the card quite a bit worse. It's now comparable to Spellbreaker like before, and also Keeper of the Grove. For Druid decks, I think sometimes this actually could be chosen over Keeper of the Grove, especially in Beast Hunter decks, because Ironbeak Owl is a beast. And like I said, the deal 2 damage part of Keeper of the Grove is going to be less significant now that aggro is pretty much out of the meta. And then when you compare it to Spellbreaker, you're really paying 1 extra mana for +2/+2, which is actually very good. So I think that Ironbeak Owl won't be seeing that much play anymore. You'll usually opt for Spellbreaker, but I still do think that it'll be better than Keeper of the Grove in some situations. The next card is Knife Juggler, and I think Knife Juggler actually got a pretty fair deal in this nerf thing, because I know a lot of people thought it was going to be a 3 mana 3/2, some even thought it would be a 3 mana 2/2, and by making it a 2 mana 2/2, they've actually let him off the hook pretty well. A 2/2 isn't bad. If you look at cards like Mad Scientist, that's a 2 mana 2/2 that was played in a lot of decks. I would say the majority of decks in Standard. And although Knife Juggler would still be good in the current meta if it was a 2/2, I feel that it just won't be played. Like I said, there won't be many aggro decks that will take advantage of Knife Juggler, so I don't see it being played, not because of this nerf, but just because of the way the meta is going to be shifting. So definitely disenchant this and get your full dust back for it. The next card is Leper Gnome, and I really don't think they nerfed this that badly. The main reason people would play Leper Gnome is to get the 2 damage to the face, rather than having a 2/1. Like, 1 mana 2/1s are really important in Hearthstone because it allows you to trade up, but in a Face Hunter deck or some very aggro deck, you're really not going to be trading up, you're going to be going face, and that's where Leper Gnome is really good, because you're still going to be doing 1 damage, and as soon as you play it, it's a guaranteed 2 damage. There are a lot of situations when you're playing Face Hunter where you need 4 or 5 damage to win the game, you have something on the board, or a weapon or something, you play Leper Gnome, and then it puts your opponent into a very awkward spot where they need to actually waste a silence on the Leper Gnome and then kill it. Otherwise, it'll just either hit the face for 2, or it'll die into a minion and your opponent will take 2 damage, and then you can finish off with your hero power or your weapon, and that's enough to win the game. So I think that this nerf, although Leper Gnome is definitely significantly worse, I think that for the reason that Leper Gnome was played before, it will still be played in the few aggro decks that will be surviving after the new expansion comes out. The next card is Arcane Golem, and I think they pretty much did a Warsong Commander to Arcane Golem. Arcane Golem used to be a 3 mana 4/4 with charge, and it gave your opponent a mana crystal. Now it's a 3 mana 4/4 which doesn't have charge, but still gives your opponent a mana crystal. And the reason that this is so bad is, if you actually think this out for more than 5 seconds, like Blizzard should have, you will realize that if you play a 3 mana 4/4 on turn 3, that's okay. It's not amazing, but it's pretty decent, and you'll trade into whatever your opponent plays next because they'll be playing a 3-drop. But with this card's drawback, you're actually now going to be trading into a 4-drop. So you play this on turn 3, your opponent gains a mana crystal, they can now play a 4-drop. They can play a Chillwind Yeti, which is the most basic 4-drop ever, and that will kill this, and then for the rest of the game they'll be ahead by 1 mana. This is pretty much like the Demon Fuse effect, where you'll be pretty much putting your opponent a turn ahead of you for the rest of the game, and that's really not worth a 3 mana 4/4. The last nerf that they've issued is the Molten Giant, and they're going to be increasing this from 20 mana to 25 mana. I do agree with this change. It makes it so that Handlock is going to be a little bit more skillful to play. Playing around the 5 health range as opposed to the 10 health range as a Warlock is quite a bit harder, and I think this actually rewards better players while sort of not really helping out worse players. And what is important to note about this is that because Force of Nature is actually being nerfed, you're not going to run into the problem where you can't go down to get 0 mana Molten Giants because your opponent's Druid and they could have Force of Nature, because that combo is now gone. So I feel like Molten Giant is going to be a card that will be very good in the hands of good players and good decks, but it will not be very good in the hands of unskilled players who don't really know how to play around certain things and play around your mana total, your life total, all your resources in combined like that. And there you go, that's all the nerfs that will be coming out next week when the new expansion goes live. We're actually very close to this expansion coming out, and it's a very exciting time. I'm actually going to be making a few Hearthstone videos around this time. Although I do normally stick to the Call of Duty stuff, I will be making a few Hearthstone videos for you guys. So if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know what you think. Especially let me know about what you think about me making more Hearthstone videos. Next week, I'm going to be doing a pack opening. I should be opening I'm saying about 65 packs. I have 50 packs pre-ordered. Then I have enough gold for 10 extra packs. And Ben Brode announced in the live stream this morning that each player will receive 3 packs upon logging on during the Whispers of the Old Gods launch period. And then there'll be a quest to win 2 games in the standard format, and you will gain 5 booster packs. And then win 7 games after that. After you complete the first quest, you'll get the second one, where if you win 7 games, you'll get another 5 booster packs. So overall, I should be opening about 75 packs on the day in total, but I think for the pack opening, I'll just open the first 65, and then I might open the other 10 that I get from a thing in a later pack opening when I do some videos with you guys on some new fun decks to play in the new expansion and the new meta. But overall, this is a very exciting time for Hearthstone. Standard is a very welcome change. There's going to be new cards. Cards are going to be nerfed. There's going to be a new format. There's going to be wild, which I think will actually be a lot of fun to play as well, especially into the future. So yeah, if you guys play Hearthstone, this is a very exciting time for you. If you don't play Hearthstone, this is actually a very exciting time and a very good time to get into the game, because there's a lot of free packs to be gotten, and there's also a smaller card pool that you have to collect to actually play Standard. So that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know with a comment and also a like. I'll be making a few Hearthstone videos in the future. But anyway, my name's iSynthesise, stay fresh, and I'll see you guys later. Hey guys, how you doing? It's iSynthesise here, and welcome to my channel. If you enjoy video games and want to get better, then be sure to stick around. I make fun and informative gun guides for Black Ops 3, as well as tips and tricks videos to help you guys become better at multiplayer. The suppressor again reduces this dramatically, and the long barrel actually does a really good job at this thing.